Hello, hello. We are live and going to start in just a moment with our very special guest, Adam Griffith. Please say hello in the chat and we'll join you in just a second.
Tara, you old pro.
You are not muted, André.
I know. You've become quite accustomed to this. You are quite the producer, I must say.
Oh, well, thank you. Hello, André.
Can we get those chocolate M&Ms in the room?
What's that?
Can we get those M&Ms, only the green ones, put in the green room? In the green room,
sure. Yeah, okay. If you want them, I will make sure you have green green M&Ms.
In the green.
So welcome everyone. This is a very special live broadcast with Tara and André at a very special time with a very special guest. There's a lot of specialness happening,
sure is, huh?
Which we're going to introduce in just a moment, although it's in the post. So maybe if you're watching, you already know what we're talking about today. So let us know if you can hear us by saying hello in the comments, where you're from. Let us know if you can hear us and if you're joining us live or in the replay. So this is a special time because normally we come live every Monday at 11 a.m. Eastern, where we talk about all kinds of topics related to polyamory, open relationships, swinging, and more from our 5 years of being non-monogamous ourselves and our training and work with couples and individuals in this area. So that's what we do. And so we're coming live today at a special time because we're going to introduce a very special guest who has an awesome project that we're super excited about.
Very excited indeed.
Yeah, so let's add Adam to the broadcast. Hi, Adam.
Hello, thank you. What a special intro.
Well, I didn't do the big intro. Adam is a producer, filmmaker, and creator of a new series that he's working on called the Poly Diaries. So we're here to talk about that today. So yeah, so tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, sure, thanks. So yeah, my name is Adam. Nice to meet everybody. I live in Toronto. I'm a producer, I'm a filmmaker. I work in commercials and advertising mainly by my day job, but I've also, had some work in documentaries in the past. I worked with a company called Photographers Without Borders. They're an NGO here in Toronto and kind of across Canada. And I was fortunate enough to work on some documentaries with them. We kind of focused on mountain communities and women who are living in India. So I got to work on those. That was before I started my job now, so maybe about 6 years ago. Really loved it, like the whole process of getting to meet new people and hear stories that you've never you have zero information about, and getting to tell those stories and working with people. It was really an amazing thing. So ever since then, I've kind of had the bug to get back into it. So which kind of leads us to now, I guess. Me and my girlfriend and I, we've been together for 5 years. Our relationship has gone through some different things. She works in the performance industry, so she's taken contracts away and out of the country. So we've had a bit of a different relationship, the entire time. And through COVID, when everyone kind of got really there with their person, so that was a different part in our relationship. And then about 1.5 years ago, we started talking about ethical non-monogamy and what that might look like for us. And up until even a couple of years ago, I'd never really heard about ethical non-monogamy. And, I've heard about poly and knew a little bit about it, but didn't really do any digging. So I started hearing about ethical non-monogamy and I started researching and Googling a little bit and learning about it and realizing that this was, something that a lot of people were doing, and I didn't even really know what it was. So after kind of reading about it and realized that, back in my single life, as I look back, it was almost kind of how I was living my life in a way, you know what I mean? You get to a point where you just have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 really strong connections with people and everyone's kind of aware and you're in the same boat. And ultimately in those past relationships, a lot of them, you find out that one person wants monogamy maybe more than the other and things kind of fizzle out. But yeah, up until now, it was something that I hadn't discussed with my partner openly. And so now we're a couple years in, we're still learning every day. And I'm still very curious, which is kind of what brought me to this project.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so much to learn, I think. And I mean, would you say if you look back at, how your relationships were in the past, that, being non-monogamous, had you known about it, might have been a path you would have chosen sooner in your life, like ethical non-monogamy rather than, what some of us do, which is more unethical.
Right. Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's not even something that you hear about or you heard about. And I think there's more things coming out now. There's, some television shows, and there's more podcasts, and there's books, and, the book Poly Secure, I'm on I think maybe a 2-month waiting list at the library in Toronto right now. So if that's any indication of, and there's apps, there's Field, and there's FetLife, and there's so many more avenues where people can, have conversations with their peers, and that doesn't feel like some kind of weird underground black market thing that is totally unspoken. I think it's a lot more open now, and there's people putting it in their dating profiles that they're ethically non-monogamous. That's something you wouldn't have even seen or heard of a few years ago. So it's really starting to kind of be talked about more, and so I think this is the perfect opportunity to kind of own the conversation more than just letting some TV producers who want, all the clicks to make the story how they want it to be.
Yeah, I'm glad for the mainstream approach to it, that it is becoming part of our vernacular, because it helps to normalize this, right? We know that there's more than one way to relate to people, right? Whether we're monogamous or polyamorous, either one is just as valid. But really, we do advocate, as I said, for that the idea that it be ethical, that it be consenting, that all players know what they're going into, but also that we remove any kind of stigmatization, any kind of shame associated with it, because we simply love. We want to interact with other people, and that should be perfectly acceptable. It falls someplace on the human experience.
Yeah. And that's why we started our group, Let's Talk Polyamory. We really wanted to share how people can open an existing relationship or be consensually non-monogamous, and have that be something that that they get to experience and do it in a healthy, safe, and secure way. And we just didn't see that there was a lot of that out there. And so that was part of our motive behind starting our group, and also staying connected to friends actually during the pandemic. But then it transitioned into something more because we saw that need out there for something a little more higher touch than reading a book, for example, where people get like real help on navigating kind of what can be the up and down waters that they experience through their journey into ethical non-monogamy. So I would love to ask you then, so given your experience then, and this idea around telling stories, is this what began the idea and started the inspiration for Poly Diaries?
Yeah, it was a few things. I mean, one, like I said, I've been itching to start my own thing on the side outside of work, and really wanting to tell a story that matters to people and that resonates with people, and that is important right now. So along with that, I just started consuming media. I read some books like The Ethical Slut. That's a classic one, I think, that probably a lot of people in this group have read. Watching a lot of YouTube videos, watching some documentaries, podcasts. Like I said, Polyamory was something I dove right into hard about 1.5 years ago when I first started learning. It was a great resource of more, just a lot of things, things you could even take outside of your relationship. I think just really good kind of advice and conversations that on there. But yeah, the more I watched, the more I realized a lot of the media, and I speak especially in the video sense, because that's what I'm mainly kind of talking about with this, is it really focused on, a lot of the same sort of relationships, sensationalized stuff too, taking any angle they could to make it exciting, if you will. A lot of, one guy, 2 women, oh my God, how's he doing this? Or 2 guys, 1 girl, oh my God, how are these guys handling it? And a lot of the stuff, a lot of the questions was focused on things, like, what's your sex life like? How does it work? And, the classic, let's go up to your bedroom and we'll look at you all sleep in the bed together. Like, let me see how that works. Like, it's totally just scratching the surface of what these relationships are. And it's such a shallow view of it. So I was kind of thinking, like, what is going on with that? So that was one thing that kind of irked me a little bit when I was watching all of this. And I've gone through a lot of different content. I'm sure there's a lot more out there on YouTube, but I feel like I've got a good little resource thing and saved page going of the videos I've seen, and it is a lot similar. And I noticed there was a real lack of diversity in the content that existed, you know, in terms of a lot of things like age, gender, sexual orientation, cultural background, ethnicity. There's so many different, you know, versions of these relationships that exist out there. And it was such a narrow view that I noticed that I was seeing, and it didn't really, you know, talk at all about the uniqueness of these relationships. And because I think poly relationships, that they're so unique. Everything is unique. Every relationship you have with somebody is unique in its own way. So to kind of show one version of this, it was doing a real disservice, I think. And the main thing that really inspired this idea was a lot of times I would, you know, the video would end and I'm like, okay, that's great. And I would have questions that would remain like, okay, so this new person just got brought into this couple's relationship and they just opened up, but like it's working great right now, but how is it working in 6 months from now? And I kind of got a weird feeling from that person, like they weren't being genuine, like what really happened afterwards? And, oh, there's kids in this relationship. That's great. Like, how does that work out? And there was just so much missing from what I think is such an important part of, you know, ethically non-monogamous and poly relationships, whereas how do they grow? How do they change? How are they evolving over time? Because to me, that's the interesting part, a very interesting part of it. And anything out there that I've seen, mostly video related, it doesn't explore that at all. So that's kind of the basis of the idea of this is watching these relationships grow and change and evolve and yeah.
Yeah, I love that idea of it, like the journey over time, because I think that everybody's journey is different. Sometimes they start in the same place, sometimes they don't. And there can be lots of like variations and permeations and stuff. I always like to show this little diagram. I just happen to have it here because this is where we do all of our live broadcasts. But this is from Jessica Fern's Polysecure, although we've added a bit to it. But it's often a typical journey that happens for people. Not everybody, but I think a lot of the people that we run into start in a place of, say, monogamy, where there's very high emotional exclusivity and very high sexual exclusivity, and then they transition throughout that, and they may not go directly from monogamy all the way over to relationship anarchy, where it's, you know, there's, you know, where you're breaking down relationships and hierarchies completely, but they may start experiencing things like swinging, where they might be doing things with a partner, or they may not, you know what I mean? And it's sometimes in those transitions that things happen and evolve over time. And you wouldn't see that if you just watched a one-time story of someone.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
But I also appreciate the idea that you might watch their progress over time, and that we don't just get a snippet of a Saturday night kind of interaction, but we see that this is a viable way of living, that it is sustainable, that it is has many components that we find in other so-called traditional relationships, right? There is love and honesty and deep, long-lasting, appreciative relationships that are sustainable, that it's not just about sex.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there's so many nuances to it. I mean, I look at our own journey from where we started with sort of exploring, if I may, we talk about this all the time, so I think it's fine, but like exploring threesomes to now being where I would say we're polyamorous with, you know, a hint of swinger, you know what I mean? But even saying that, you know, what I love about being in an open polyamorous relationship is the experiences and the love that we get to have on our own and together. And I think people miss that part completely. Like there's people that we saw this past weekend that have become really close friends, and we don't always see them to have sex. We see them hang out and have dinner or go to a festival, you know what I mean? And they become enmeshed in your life. And I think for me, that's like the enriching part of it, like all the love, you know, that you can bring in and absorb. It's just so amazing.
Yeah.
Or not. I mean, we know other people
who
want very much of an emotional exchange, right? They want it to be simply sexual, simply physical. They want it to remain emotionally exclusive to the, you know, two or three of them. And they will not want that. So it really is a very big umbrella, right? There's many possible variations. It's whatever works best for you. But on that, I'm curious as to the title, Poly Diaries, because maybe it is about opening up, open relation diaries, about consensual, open, non-monogamous. I'm curious about the relationship in the title of poly, because it's often something that comes up in our conversation. Are we poly? Are we swingers? Are we friends with benefits? But the poly, the polyamory, the poly part seems to be rather, I guess, like the incorporating umbrella from which all these things can come under. How do you feel about the word poly in that?
Yeah, so this has started as a working title. And it's one of those things that I'm not 100% stuck on, but the more I say it and I think about it, and you're right, André, I feel like there's so many. Poly is a word that I think immediately hits people's head, no matter what they know about the topic. And they're like, okay, I know what we're talking about. So to me, that was the easiest way to do it. And ethically non-monogamous is simply too long for a title.
No.
And the ENM, abbreviation, not everybody knows that. So, and I've struggled with that as well. I've thought the same thing, and I keep coming back to, okay, it's more of a headline that people get. And then the diaries part, I kind of thought of it as, I initially started as like, people are sharing their inner, it's kind of like a diary, like these are their stories. And the more I think about that, the more it really resonates with what I'm trying to do. Is I just want to tell people's stories, like their authentic, genuine story that is theirs. And what's more personal than a diary? If you think back to like a traditional sharing your deepest secrets, and your true thoughts and your authentic feelings. And I think so that's where kind of the diaries part comes out. And there's going to be another aspect of it. I'm still, in terms of how a documentary is filmed, I'm still in the very early processes of this. So I'm still ideating and seeing how things now will play out on screen. But the more I think of it, I'm thinking that having, the people that end up being cast, taking almost like a vlog diary entry. So I'm talking maybe 2 minutes a week where they're just kind of sitting down and just kind of talking about what happened the last week. And maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was a really mundane, boring week, and that's totally fine. That's life. But maybe something happened that's worth talking about, or maybe they're feeling jealousy, or maybe something really great happened, or maybe they brought somebody into their life, or maybe there was a breakup. And to talk about those things live while they're happening and just briefly talk about it, taking a little diary entry, not to necessarily even use, but just to go back and reflect on and be able to see that story happening and the emotions that are going on with that story versus I see you, it's hard if it's 3 months is a long time, even though filming 4 times over a year with people, it seems like a lot. There still is so much that happens, in 3 months. So having those quicker touch points and, really kind of being part of the journey with me, everyone, that's just part of telling their story authentically, I think. So really kind of getting into that part of things and helping people tell their stories, their diary stories, if you will. That's kind of where the title is coming from. Yeah.
So maybe step back, because I feel like I know a little bit more about how you're imagining you would do this in how you're going to follow people's stories. So
right.
In terms of how you're filming and other than people doing their own personal vlogs, what are you hoping to do? What would someone expect to see in it?
Right. So are we talking kind of the logistics side of things or the final product a little bit, or a little bit of both?
Well, a little bit of both, I guess. Like, what is it like? It's a diary, right? So you had said something before about like every 4 months or every 3 months or something like that.
So the idea is for a year, I'm going to, the people who end up being cast for this, we're going to go out and I'm going to meet with them 4 times throughout the course of the year. And those will be based around different events that might be happening. We're going to plan out, and it's really going to build itself based on every single person. Every single story is going to be different. But the idea is that we're going to have touch points 4 times throughout the year to see these things progress. In the end of how it works out, the way I'm seeing it right now is there's going to be between 10 and 20 episodes that are each kind of 6 to 10 minutes long, and each episode is really going to touch on a different topic. So jealousy, communication, children, shame, taboo around the relationship that you're in amongst the general society, different types of relationships dynamics, acceptance by your family, the community that you build. So throughout the course of the year, I'm going to be asking, and I have a laundry list of questions that I'm going to be asking everybody, and through, the process, find out where these stories intersect, find out where they align, and then kind of just crafting a story, people's similar stories, in these relationships, and everything will kind of touch on one. And I think some topics are going to have more than one episode, and we're going to revisit them because people's views on them will change, I'm sure. So I'm really just excited about all the possibilities. When I step back and look at it, it's just like, whoa, there is so much to talk about. But I know as the process starts going, and once you get to know people and we develop that relationship, the stories, they already wrote themselves. I mean, the stories exist. They are these people's stories. So we're not making anything up. We're just finding a beautiful way to tell it that will resonate with people, and share a different perspective than what's currently out there.
Mm-hmm. It might. Go ahead.
I think it's a fantastic idea. I love the idea, and I love that we are getting a candid look at the average person, that we are all human in this. Because for me, as a sex positive psychotherapist, the biggest part of it, or one of the biggest components, is to help normalize this, that we could be accepting of ourselves just as we are. And unfortunately, still so many people are closeted with this way of relating to other people. They are not free for whatever reasons, whether it's their religion or their workplace or their community, their children, whatever the reason is. And I think that projects like yours will help to mainstream this, will help show that it is perfectly fantastic and not so perverse as we might imagine it to be, that it is quite valid.
That's it. It's just normal people living their life. That's it. You know what I mean? So
yeah, I think people would be surprised at how normal it actually is. I mean, when you arrive at a place that's more secure. I mean, like I said, right. This is why we do the work we do. There's a lot of bumpy bits. There's a lot of communication that needs to be done. There's a lot of transitions, things you get to know. But like one of our clients was saying today, it's like also like an amazing opportunity for them to grow. Like had this not happened, would they have stagnated more in their relationship? What would have happened? What would have actually happened? Maybe they needed this micro trauma in their particular origin story to allow them to grow and experience more. So
a lot of people just don't understand or have heard of it. Like for instance, I have not even broached the topic with my parents or family. So, maybe they'll see this and this will be it. But, and it's not like I'm shy about these things. It's just kind of sometimes a weird conversation to just bring up out of nowhere with your parents who are in their 70s and don't necessarily aren't, aware of this, or even they'd be like, oh, okay. But it's just an extra conversation that isn't normally had, I don't think, or there's not much. So I totally understand why, for whatever reason, people aren't open about it.
That's interesting. I wonder though, we feel as though we are discovering sex and we are creating these new ways of being, but your parents are probably old enough to be members or had witnessed free love. Back in the day, the hippies were very much polyamorous, right? They believed that they should be able to express themselves in this way. So I wonder how they will actually receive that. Will they?
Yeah, my parents are very open and supporting and understanding, and I have no fears of them rejecting me in any way. And I'm so fortunate for that. My parents were also high school sweethearts. So that's the relationship that they, have known for their entire life. So this is definitely an alternate thing for them, even though they lived through that era. I think they were very, committed to their life of monogamy. So,
but it might be a stark contrast to your demonstration. Have they ever suggested that you should perhaps find somebody and settle down, that you should also get a sweetheart?
Oh yeah. I mean, I'm 35 now. So I think they've been fighting that battle for a while. I mean, I do have a girlfriend. We've been together for a while. My sister, who's a year younger, has lived the life of getting a good job and having kids, and they live out where they live. So they have that part of, they have the grandchildren and all that figured out with my sister. So the pressure's off me a little bit.
Yeah, I think, it's interesting, like my parents are older than yours, but they did have a little bit of a hard time adjusting to my coming out to them. But for me, it was a really important part of my journey, especially because of the work we do. Like I coach people on this. It's like I couldn't exactly be hidden. Like I felt like I was a bit of a hypocrite to be hidden. So I'm actually quite out and open everywhere. You know, I don't necessarily announce it to the rooftops, you know, at work, but like one of my colleagues that I'm getting to know now, it, knows, because we were talking about something and he's like, well, what do you do on the other days when you're not here? Right. So I told him very matter of factly, and he was like, cool, you know, and that was it. End of conversation. Parents,
anyone I've brought it up with, everyone's like, oh, that's great. And I think people in my age group and like within 10 years, everyone's very open and okay about it for sure. So,
but we have friends that have varying levels of open and outness themselves, you know, because we are a slightly older generation than you. So, you know, we grew up maybe slightly different, and a lot of people who have professional jobs and stuff like that don't want to be out because they feel it could have a negative, you know, impact on the relationship. So,
right. I mean, I so many of the I'm a sucker for comment sections. I don't know why, but I love a comment section almost as much as I like watching a video. And so many of the videos focusing on CNM and Poly content, the comments are just like, they're mind blowing. There's so many negative comments from people who I don't even know why they're in the comment section. If they hate it so much, why would they spend time watching this video? But they do. And like, I can't believe it. So to me, that's more reason to get more things out there, that to just kill the stigma and normalize things and just show people that it's not this big, bad, scary thing that's going to ruin society as we know it. It's just another way to live your life.
Yeah, it sure is. It makes me think back to the idea that the word sex itself is often edited out, right? They'll have S apostrophe X, but war and gun are never edited. And that's the real perversion right there, right? So if we can expose this and show that as viable, that it is loving, that it is consensual, that it is ethical, then I see no reason for protest.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, that's part of my goal. So what I really want to get out of this project is, you know, I want to create content that resonates with people in the community and really helps them feel seen. I think that's really important. I want to destigmatize and normalize, you know, alternative relationships to monogamy, because I think that's really important too. And I want to provide, you know, information and resources to people who are just learning about it, like I still am and was, you know, a couple of years ago, and to somebody who, you know, maybe your partner is something you're bringing up with them, and instead of trying to talk your way through it, being able to show them, you know, give them a resource that they can learn on their own and provide, you know, alternative relationship scripts, for lack of a better word, kind of show people, oh, I could live like that, or I could, because maybe you don't even imagine what your life could be until you see it sometimes. And you're like, oh, people are doing that. Oh, people are doing that. Oh, what could I be doing? Like, this is different than what I grew up knowing and have seen. And most of all, I want to just be, like I said, I want to be very inclusive, and I want to show more than what's out there. Genders, ages, ethnicities, different dynamics, different perspectives. I think that there's just so much to be told and shown and explored and shared. And we've only really just scratched the surface of you know, what's out there.
I love it. I love it. So that's amazing. I've got the link up here on our live so people can see it, although it's a very hard link, but it's in the comments as well, that goes along with this post, and we can drop it again in the comments. So this is one way people can get involved. So tell us a little bit about how people can get involved and what kind of the timeline is.
Yeah. So if you, on the link there, you'll be able to, I give kind of a brief explanation on that link at the top, just to give everybody a little bit better of an idea about it. Right now I'm in the casting process still, so I'll be doing that for the next month or so, just kind of depending on how inclusive of, you know, how inclusive of a group I'm able to get so far of people who are, I'm not going to just push it forward if it's not something that is going to be working, I think. But so far I've been getting great responses. Thanks to everybody who's already filled out a form and taken the time. I really appreciate it. And yeah, so I'm hoping to get started this spring, kind of later April, early May is when I want to start getting filming. I'll probably start around the Toronto area. You know, time and resources and travel and people's schedules and availability. That's going to be the biggest challenge of that. It's fine. That's what I do for a living. I'm totally happy to to work all these out. So I'll be just limited in space and time and resources. So I'll probably start in Toronto in the GTA. And right now it's kind of seeming like I'm getting some good clusters of folks around Ottawa area, and also in the Kingston, Belleville, Prince Edward County area. So as of right now, those are looking like probably the 3 little groups of geographical groups, at least, that we'll be starting with. But, you know, in the future, I not only across Canada, but, you know, across the world, I think that beyond just what we have here in North America, like the stories are exponentially different in other cultures and countries and continents. So, you know, we're starting here, and who knows what the future holds, but I'm so excited.
That's awesome. Well, we're super excited to be part of it. If we can, as I told you before when we first chatted, if we can be of any help to you, to the people who you cast, you know, we're here as a resource, and, you know, happy to participate, and super excited about this project.
Yeah.
So,
well, I was curious, like, what are your experiences like working with people, you know, who are non-monogamous as they transition over time? Well, we're talking about that subject.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I think people do, like I said, come from a different spot. And I think typically a lot of the people that come to us that reach out, who actually need like support from like a therapist and coach team, are people who typically have started with monogamy. So they've opened up an existing relationship that's maybe longer term, married, nesting, they have kids. It's sort of like higher stakes for them. So making it work is super important to them. And so, you know, they're having to relearn sort of their attachment patterns and learn how to communicate with each other and figure out, you know, what's impacting their feelings of jealousy and that sort of thing. And so we have people like from sort of around the world. Actually, in fact, our first group that we started in during COVID, we have like one of our original members is from Israel. You know what I mean? So we can connect you up with some of those people too that are sort of out there in some areas that are where it's even less open and that sort of thing. And we do get people that join our group, Let's Talk Polyamory, that are in countries and cities where it's really taboo. So yeah. Did you want to add something there, André?
No, I think you get a very concise response as to what it's been like. Yeah, absolutely. We've been helping people who primarily came from what we call closed or traditional relationships, monogamy, and are transitioning. And unfortunately, more often than not, they're not doing the necessary work in the foundation part of it. So they do end up kind of falling a little bit in the muck. And, you know, they might have issues of insecurity, of jealousy, all those things. And we help to course correct that and show them that it is completely viable if it is what they're wanting.
Yeah, because I think people get excited about the idea and they like jump in. And at first it's like super exciting. And then I think sometimes something will hit you and because it will also sometimes at the beginning, I don't know, this was sort of our experience, André, like it'll really, I mean, we still have this, but it'll intensify your relationship, like heighten it until you know, there might be a moment where you're like, oh shit, now maybe this person might stick around, and oh shit, they might be now a threat to my, you know, my little life that I have. Right. And so that's when sort of the work happens.
Yeah. I mean, what you just touched on. So speaking of the situation you just say, I just watched a documentary a couple weeks ago. It's called There's No I in Threesome. It's HBO Max. So essentially, and that is positioned as these two people taking a real shot at whatever they were doing, ethical non-monogamy, opening up their marriage. Paul, I don't think they really ever decided because they didn't really talk about it, which was one problem I noticed. But that was a perfect example because HBO is one of the biggest media outlets out there. So people trust HBO. Right. And they put a documentary out there, and it was a good watch. I enjoyed it. It was a good watch, but I felt, and I was reading some like the reviews afterwards, is they really just jumped in with zero research, kind of reading agreements. They had made these agreements, but they broke them immediately. She went away to live in another part of the country or another country, like as soon as they opened it up, which is, from what I've read, you know, a big no-no in terms of, or it can be a big no-no. It just makes things so much harder adding distance on top of this new relationship you're trying to now try out. So that was just a great example of, I think, people doing ethical non-monogamy the wrong way, but it being highlighted as, hey, look, we tried it, but it didn't work. So boom. And like, here's the documentary. How does it end? It doesn't work.
Right.
Or proof.
Right.
And so, and to me, and it really looked like they were giving it an honest shot. Like the two characters were very lovable. And so I think that's just another example of, you know, the wrong kind of media being shown. And yeah, this is what I'm trying to do is the opposite of that, is showing it in a real way, which yeah, I think is important.
Yeah, and I think
I'm sorry, but you touched on an important point that I think indicated why their relationship went south. Is because they did not have a good foundation, and the foundation is all about communication. So we often tell people when they're first entering, they may imagine that it's all about sex, and there may be a lot of sex, but it's really about communication. And the more you communicate, the better foundation you have, the better your sex will be.
100%.
So if you want more sex, learn how to communicate better.
communication is lubrication.
Sure.
That's my favorite. One of my
favorite. Explain that. I've never heard that one. That's good.
Oh, communication is lubrication. Oh, yeah. You missed my reel about it.
Oh, that's good. I have to check that one out.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, she does it as it relates to sex, but I think communication is lubrication for relationships too.
It sure is.
And it's like the biggest skill I think you can build. And I think, you know, I feel super proud because the people that we've worked with have really honed in on this skill, like this attunement communication process that we teach. And, you know, it works, you know. Yeah. And so, I mean, I think things are figure outable, but there is a way that you can approach these things that sets you up for greater success, even if you've had some bumps at the beginning, which, you know, we all do, right? So
yeah. It can be hard at the start, but I think it's worth it. And it's kind of one of those things where, you know, the pool looks really cold and you dip your toe and it is really cold, and then you get in there and 2 minutes later you're just used to it. So
yeah.
Yeah, and being open to change if it's not working for you. Like, it doesn't, just because you start one way, it's not, this is the thing we tell people as well. Like, just because you decide right now that this is what you want to try doesn't mean you're stuck in that forever. It's part of the ongoing review and conversation. And, you know, like, there's things that we do now, André and I, that we would never have done at the very beginning, or I couldn't have imagined it, you know, and yet it's happening. Like this weekend, André's going to a gathering with some people, but with another partner, and I'm somewhere else. You know what I mean? So, like, if you had told me back, you know, when we started, if this would have been a reality, I probably would have said, hell's no, like, that's crazy. You know what I mean? And not to say I'm not going to have any FOMO or have some thoughts about it, but I definitely feel okay about it, you know? So.
But that's because we communicate about it, right? We have open dialogue, right? The reason why our relationship is so successful is because we are good at communicating. We bring ourselves to that idea. But, you know, we talk about the names of it, right? Ethically non-monogamous, consensual non-monogamous. So the consent comes in the idea that we are open and transparent about this, but it's also consenting that if at any point we feel that this does not work for us, we are within our rights always to revisit this and say, you know what, it might have worked for me in the past, but right now I want something else. And it's all about consent and respect and communication, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that I'm looking forward to things like that happening throughout the course of this, where people maybe backtrack a little bit, and that's okay. And people can see that that's okay, and that it's an option, and that there's just really so many ways that relationships can go. And yeah, just having that happen.
I can't wait to see it all come together. So
very exciting.
Yeah. So thank you so much, Adam, for joining us.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I've been watching you for a while, and I'm excited to be on it. And André, I love your bow ties. Your collection is one of the best I've ever seen. So that's great.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So the link is up here, and it'll also be in the post. People can reach out to you. If they can't find the link, just reach out to one of us and we'll make sure you get it. And yeah, keep us posted on how everything goes, and let us know how we can help.
I will. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for watching.
Take care. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.